What we're going to be speaking on now, we've got Anthony Whitehurst. You guys met Anthony last time if you were here. Anthony's going to be speaking on webinars, and he's going to go into a lot of detail. And again, if he may want to talk a little bit about what we did, but I'm going to let Anthony come up. It's his show. He'll explain to you what we do. I know this. How many of you are doing pre-education webinars, videos, things like that now? Okay, you guys are losing out if you're not doing it. These things run 24/7, and if you learn how to do them, it's just another event that people can't make your live events, so you really need to do it. So give Anthony a hand.
Man. So there was this young, very excited Buddhist monk, just joined the monastery. And he's very enthusiastic, very excited. He saw all these masters around him, people who had reached, phases of enlightenment, had achieved things, and they were sitting, had a table, had a bowl of rice, long wooden table, and he had this Zen master sitting next to him. He's like, Master, I want to achieve, I want to do what these masters have done. I want to be like you. What do I do right now? I want to be acting every moment of the day. What can I do right now to move forward to achieve enlightenment? So the Zen master looks at him. He says, well, you just finished eating, right? He goes, yeah. You've got a dirty bowl of rice there? He's like, yeah. So how about you clean that bowl of rice? So the point of the story is that the young kid who was so enthusiastic and so excited, he wanted to know exactly what to do, but it was all laid out for them in the experience that they were going to go through in the monastery. Everything was timed and everything was laid out for them. And so he wanted to jump to the end, but really he just needed to pay attention at the phase he was at that moment. And this, I'm going to talk about webinars today. It's going to be the same thing with webinars. There's a place in your practice where you're at right now where you can be getting results with webinars in the next couple weeks. And it doesn't take all of this stuff to set up. So we're going to talk about that. So in this presentation, I'll be talking about what webinars are good for, what they're not good for, and how to create a very bare bones, simple webinar campaign that can drive patients into your practice. The thing that I hear most often, because I've had a lot of conversations with doctors around webinars, and the things that they're excited about webinars, and the reason why they want to use them, is the first is that it's automated. So, you set it and forget it, you put it on an autopilot. Second is that you can reach a lot more people through the internet, which is true, but not fully true. And the third is that webinars are easier than live events or doing dinner talks, because it's automated and it's online, it's much easier. So we're going to play a little Mythbusters for webinars, and we're going to talk about some myths that exist out there. So the first one is that it's automated. So yeah, eventually you can get to the point where you're automating a webinar, but the truth is the automated webinars are actually optimized and working. They've gone through several dozen tests, and they've tested everything from the copy, the landing pages, the emails, and the offer, and everything is perfectly designed where that presentation can get a consistent result with the people who watch it. So there's been a lot of work that's happened on the back end manually to get it to a place where it was ready to be automated. The second myth is that you can reach a lot more people through the internet. There are a lot more people in the world, and there's a lot of people out there. The truth is that the people who are running telemedicine practices and are successful with them, they're already good at internet marketing. They already understand a lot of what it takes in order to build a successful telemedicine practice. And a second truth is that there aren't a ton of people looking for telemedicine solutions. So there aren't a bunch of people who are just saying, oh, I want to find a doctor, but I don't want one in my local zip code. I'd rather have someone who I can meet on a Skype session. People would rather that in-person, personal touch experience with a doctor. The people who are successful in telemedicine, they've built that market themselves. They've positioned themselves so that, the people on the other end feel like, oh, this is the best solution for me, rather than, it being an actual customer problem that they're going out to find. So the third myth is that webinars are easier than live events or dinner talks. So the truth is that creating a customized webinar that converts leads into customers is a lot more work than running weekly or bi-weekly dinner talks. And I'll show you exactly why. So I'm going to give you a caveat. Before I show you this, know that I'm not going to recommend you do this because I don't want your brain to overload right at the beginning. So just keep that in mind. So an optimized webinar. So it's an hour and a quarter, somewhere between an hour and a half. Perfectly scripted presentation, has the right offer, the right product. You're pitching the right audience. They have the right structure to content and all of that. So you have, in your email sequence, you have 6 emails that they get when they sign up for the webinar. Depending on how long they watched, they get different emails that are getting them to watch more to the next step. There's 4 replay emails in case they don't watch, and 12 sales emails that gets them through it. And each one of those sales emails has an optimized email subject line and the script and everything like that. So the web pages, you have your optimized registration page, a thank you page, watch page, offer page. Now you're doing ad campaigns. Well, you can't just do an ad campaign just to the webinar because who wants to spend an hour and a half time with you without knowing you? So you have to do content marketing ads, get them on your mailing list, run webinar ads, and do your offer ads after they've signed up for your webinar. So once you have all of that in place, then you need to do about a few dozen split tests. So you're testing for design, images, copy, landing page format, emails, the offer, the content, and you want to do a minimum of 10 rounds of recording the webinar. Okay. So so say you have an optimized webinar. So it's only going to work for so long. You need to do upkeep. So you need to run new content, new ads. You need to have new funnel entry points to get more people into that funnel. Who would like to do that? Okay. So I think that was unanimous. No one wants to do that right now. So if you have an online business, that's great. You're going to want to do that. If you're running telemedicine and that's all you're doing, you're going to want to learn how to do that. But there's a much simpler way. So I talked to you with that whole structure, everything that I just showed you, all the work that goes into that. Let's look at conversion rates for dinner talks versus webinars. So dinner talk conversion rates, the people who show up, now we're just looking at the people who show up, who move into a first visit ORF. When you have it optimized, you can get 40%, 50%, 60%. I heard one person who was getting 75% sign up into an ROF from that dinner talk. That's amazing conversion rates. Webinars. Now this is with a fully optimized webinar. Everything that I showed you listed on that page. People who watch to those who take the next step, if it's good, 12.5%. So that's a good webinar. That's a pretty well optimized webinar, 1 out of 8 people who watch it. And then excellent, which is is about 20%. So know that only about 1/3 of the people will watch. So you're going to get better show-up rates for a dinner talk than a webinar. And then only about 20 to 33% of the people who land on the webinar registration page are going to actually sign up for the webinar. So at the end of it, you're looking about 1% of people, 1 to 2% of people who know about your webinar to actually sign up for that first visit ROF are showing up. So if we look at those conversion rates, and just knowing that there's a limited amount of people in your local community, there's a certain bandwidth. You have a zip code that you're working with, or a series of zip codes that you're working with. So there's a limited amount of people in your community. You do not want to, when you have their attention, you do not want to waste that bandwidth of their attention on 12.5% or less conversion. It's just not going to be a very effective way to do that. So the question is, and you probably know the answer, should we throw webinars out the window? Obviously not, because I'm delivering this talk. So I'm going to, I'm only like 10 minutes in, so there's more content coming. The answer is no. We're not going to throw webinars out the window. But there's a much simpler way that you can run webinars that can get real results. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. So I'm going to walk you through some of these, and if you're attending my Facebook marketing speech tomorrow, I'm going to walk you through, and this is what I call a customer journey map. So I'm going to map out the customer journey. So when I'm done with this, I'll give you a moment to take a picture of it. So you don't need to take a picture right now, but I'll walk you through the full customer journey map of how it works, and there's a few of these that I'm showing today. So all of your marketing in the community, for the marketing that you're doing, it's going to have a call to action. And I want that call to action to be a dinner talk. I want you sending prospects in the community to a live event where they get to sit down and you know the conversion rate's good. So, a lot of you are using different means of advertising, Facebook, television and radio, newspaper ads, whatever. So the prospect responds to the ad. And let's say they call in your office. We'll consider this a warm prospect. They've seen some sort of advertising that you've done in the community, and something about it triggered them, and they said, okay, I'm interested in that. I want to know a little bit more. Maybe I'm interested in attending a free presentation. So on the phone, you're going to say, hey, are you available this date? If they're not available this date, what's the next date? And if you're doing them weekly, you can probably stretch 3 weeks and schedule them to attend a dinner talk 3 weeks in advance. But you're looking at about 1 or 2 dinner talks, 1 or 2 dates. And assuming that everything goes well, they schedule that event and they attend. And then at that event, they sign up and they continue to the first visit, ROF. So that's if everything goes perfectly according to plan and is the best optimized pathway for you to convert the most amount of people responding to ads to clients. So if they are not available to attend one of the upcoming 1, 2, or 3 dinner talk presentations, then you can send them the webinar invite and schedule a follow-up phone call with them, which is basically a 10-minute phone call. And I'm going to walk through this a bit more in depth with a little bit later, but we'll just give the bare bones of how it works right now. So this is a webinar replay that you're going to send to them, and you're going to send it through an email campaign. So you add them, if you're using MailChimp, Infusionsoft, whatever, you add them to a specific autoresponder sequence that is designed to deliver them emails that get them to watch this webinar replay. And you don't give it to them. You don't say, hey, go to this website and sign up for it. You take their email down on the phone and say, hey, look out for this, reply to this email, let me know. And then they know that there's a 10-minute phone call that's scheduled post-webinar. So this is happening in the future. So there's another group who signed up to attend a dinner talk, but didn't show up. So we know that there's another group of people right there. So you're going to recontact them, and you either choose, okay, am I going to invite them to this webinar, because they had some sort of conflict or whatever, or do I want to send them back, schedule them for another dinner talk? So that's your decision to make with that prospect, but you recall them. So you have 2 groups of people that are in there. You have those who weren't able to attend, or those who scheduled a date and did not attend. And those people are going in a sequence, email sequence, to watch a webinar. So at the end of the webinar, the call to action is to schedule that first visit. So that contains all the pre-education content that you need in order for them to be in the right frame of mind, in the right state to schedule that first visit. So at the end of that webinar, there's a call to action, schedule this first visit. And so there's a group of them that are going to schedule this visit on their own. They get the email, they watch the webinar, and they schedule it at the end. But as a safety bucket, because not all of them are going to watch the webinar, or not all of them are going to take action, you have this phone call that's happening post-webinar as a safety bucket. So they're interested, you get them on, you have a 10-minute phone call that's scheduled with a staff member in your office. That's a follow-up in case they have any questions. And the call to action there is, and you can choose to watch the webinar, if they did watch the webinar, then obviously you're going to answer any questions, handle any objections, and book the ROF. If they didn't watch the webinar, then you could choose, okay, I'm going to send them to the webinar or to a dinner talk. But this is essentially a system, a formula that's designed to use dinner talks and webinars together. So now we have a second group of people. These are people who are responding to ads. They've just found out about you. They're just interested in responding to whatever ads that call to action was the dinner talk, and this is where they're going. There's this second group that we're going to call hot prospects. They're the ones who are calling your office to schedule a first visit. So this is a very different group. These people are already ready. They say, I want you to be my doctor. I want a first visit. I want to know more. They're not asking to go into pre-education. They're not doing anything. But you want them to be in that pre-education because you want them to be ready for that first visit. They need to have that experience. So there are really two things that you can do with this group. The first is you can send them through the exact same sequence that you send that warm prospect through. First you offer a dinner talk, and then if it doesn't work out, then you send a webinar and you have follow-up and all of that. But this is a group, since they're a hot lead, since they have already demonstrated that they want that first session, their chance of consuming a webinar is much higher. So you can send them directly to a webinar invite first. And schedule that phone call, get them in that email sequence, and make sure that's optimized. So this is the point where you take a picture, and we'll have another one later. I'll give everyone a minute to get their camera set up. And I'm going to explain all of this again because repetition is key. Okay. Think everyone's good. Okay. So to think about it in a slightly simpler way, and keep your cameras ready because I'm going to take a picture. You may want to take a picture of this too. You have warm prospects, you have hot prospects. Warm prospects are interested to learn more about your practice, or they want to engage in some sort of educational experience. Hot prospects are ready to schedule a first session. So with your warm prospects, you send them to a dinner talk. If that doesn't work, if the dates don't work or they don't show up, you send them to a webinar, pre-recorded. For hot prospects, you can do this same exact model. You can send them through the dinner talk or pre-recorded webinar, but it also works to send them to a pre-recorded webinar. And if they don't engage, they don't watch the webinar, they don't take action from the webinar, send them to a dinner talk after that. So this is the other point. Kodak moment. It's a shame that Kodak, what happened to Kodak? Okay. All right. So I walked you through the sort of decision map of whether you have warm leads or hot leads in dinner talk or other. So this is going to be more in depth, and I call this a bare bones campaign because it's very, very simple, essentially. This is a bare bones campaign of how to do webinar replays for those hot leads, for people calling in the office who want to schedule a first visit. And just so you know, this is a model that I learned to be successful from a few people who are in Freedom Practice Coaching. Sheila Kilbane is one, and Natasha Azrak is another one. So I had conversations with them, and they're actually doing a similar model to this. This is probably a little more advanced with some of the decisions that they can make based off of it, but this is working for them. So this is tested to work for hot leads. So you have a hot prospect calls your office. They want to book a first session. Question?
Is the content from the webinar the same as your dinner talk?
I'm going to go into that in a minute. Yeah. So they want to book a first session, and you want pre-education first. So here's a basic script, and you'll obviously perfect this. You'll perfect this when you're working with your staff members. Thanks so much for your interest, and we do have some spaces available over the next week. Before we get scheduled, Dr. Catherine would love you to watch this 1-hour video first. It'll answer all of your questions, and then the most important part, whatever benefits that you're communicating that they get from attending the dinner talk, you insert that here. So this video, this 1-hour video, is positioned to bring value to them. It's not like, oh, you need to do this first, but it's more like, here's this great video, we want you to watch it, and there's some reason why it's beneficial to them. And at the end of the video, there's info on how you can schedule. So really, there's 2 calls to action here. So let me add you to the email list and receive the webinar, and reply to that email to make sure you got it. So reply to that email is important for a couple reasons. One, it has some response of engagement back, and it's also going to, if they use Gmail, it can pop into their promotions folder when it comes from, MailChimp or Infusionsoft or whatever. but if they reply to that email, it can jump from the promotions folder to their primary folder. So now the email marketing that you're doing is now jumping into their primary folder, which is one of the reasons why you want them to reply. And you add them to the list. You don't send them to a landing page because you're losing conversion there. So the second is let's schedule a 10-minute phone call for a time after you have time to watch the webinar. This is just in case you have additional questions. So this is doing a couple of things. One, there's some urgency. I mean, the built-in urgency, they want to schedule that 1-hour appointment, and if this is the thing that I have to do in order to get there, then I'll do it. But there's a second level of urgency. You have a slight commitment. We have a 10-minute phone call, and you're going to watch a webinar before that 10-minute phone call. And so that layer of commitment is going to increase the likelihood that they will take action and actually follow through and engage and watch the full webinar. So there's that. The second part of that that's important is you have time in the calendar. You know they're hot and they're interested and they're excited right now. They're ready to go. You don't know what's going to happen in the next couple days. They get distracted by something else. They find out another doctor, some shiny object. They have some emergency, whatever. You have a 10-minute commitment, something in their calendar that they have to attend. You mark it in your calendar and you share it with their email address so it pops up if they're using Google or Outlook or whatever it is. It pops up as an invite in their email and their calendar. So this is important. I'm going to go into what the structure of that call is a little bit later. So you're starting up here. The prospect calls to schedule that first visit, and the structure that you have is a phone script. The staff person, the person who's working the front desk, who's answering the phones, they have a certain script that they take people through whenever they get that call of someone who wants to schedule the first session. Now, let's look at the email campaign. So the email campaign, I want you to send 1 email a day for the next 5 days. So, and you can do more emails on top of that, but just to keep it simple, I want you to send 1 email a day for the next 5 days. And this is what those emails could look like. Now, you can do whatever you want. You can have whatever kind of content you want in that email. So the first day is more personal. Hey, nice to meet you. Here's the video. It should look like a personal email that's sent, even though you're just entering it from MailChimp or Infusionsoft or whatever you're using. It should read as if we had a conversation and I'm following up from this conversation. And this is an email that I'm sending you if it's one person to one person because of our conversation. And here's the replay. So the day 2 is a reminder, hey, here's the video link. What's going on? Here are some of the benefits of watching this webinar. Day 3, I want you to talk a little bit about the benefits of what you do. Like, what is it like to work with you? What is it like to engage? And you don't need to go too much in depth and following the StoryBrand model, usually less is more. You just want to say a few things that you know that are exciting to them and paint a picture of the positive experience that they'll have from working with you. Day 4 is more about the content of the webinar. So you're talking about giving a sneak peek of some specific benefit or some specific action item that comes from it to entice them a little bit more to watch the webinar. And day 5 is, you can have use an anonymous case study, but a successful patient case study, and let them know that, you've changed their name, but this is a person who gave you permission to do it because they don't want to think that you would share their story, so on and so forth. So this is a successful patient case study. This was their journey before. This is what they did, and this is why it was tailored to them, and this is their journey afterwards. So you're painting a picture of what it's going to be like for them to engage with your practice. Yep.
Are these email videos, or are these copy? Or
just copy.
Okay, just because right here we've got nice meeting you. Here's the video.
Yep.
Here's the link. So it's copy showing them where to go.
The call to action in every single one of those videos is to watch the webinar. So we don't want to engage them in any other content outside of the webinar. There are direct calls to action in this email sequence, which is like, hey, here's the video. Hey, here's the video. But you can't just crank them with that over and over again because it's like, I get it. You want me to watch the video. So you want to start doing more indirect calls to action. And you start telling a story about what it's like to work with you in your practice. And tomorrow in the Facebook marketing workshop, I'm going to talk a little bit about email marketing and direct calls to action and indirect calls to action a little bit. So this is a way to, at the bottom of the email or wherever you're placing the links for them to click through the webinar replay, this is there for, it's all the webinar replay for every single one of these. Sorry?
Day 2, they watch the video.
Yeah. So I'll answer that a little bit later with some of the, this is a very bare bones, simple thing. This is a campaign that if you already have a dinner talk and a PowerPoint presentation, you could set up in a week or 2 weeks. So some of the more advanced automation things are going to take a little bit longer, but I wanted to create a very bare bones campaign that you could just, start executing on tomorrow. And then at the end, I'm going to show you some more advanced strategies, and also, and I'll give questions for those who want to do more advanced things. But yeah, they would get all 5 emails, just out of the gate.
Anthony, I think your question was, since here's the link, the question was, did they go to the webinar and watch it then?
There would be no automated thing to set up. You can automate, hey, they click through, so we're not going to send any more because they click through. But with the very simple campaign, you don't have the automation set up where you know that they watch to the end because it's a simple campaign. Because it's just using something like Vimeo rather than...
So in this example, they're registering for a specific time and date webinar or recorded
video?
They
just get the replay right away. They could watch it in the next hour after they get off.
So they could watch it day 2?
They could watch it that moment.
Okay, I'm
adding you to this. Check the email, reply to it. You can watch it right away.
Okay, good.
This is not a time and date thing. They are getting the email to watch right now. So they watch the complete. So if they watch the complete webinar, they book the first visit. Let's talk about webinar content. So to keep this very simple, the content of the webinar, you can mirror the content of the dinner talk. Sheila Kilbane and Natasha are both basically mirroring the content of the dinner talk, and it's working. So there are some interactive things that you're not going to be able to do, but it's a lot of the same pre-education, a lot of the same structure of what you're setting up. You're talking a little bit about the story of you and your practice. You have some education that you give them. You're helping them paint a picture, all of that. So you may have to change it up a little bit because it's not live, it's recorded, but it's going to be mostly the same. Similar to the PowerPoint presentation. You may have to change a few things, but for the most part, it can remain the same. Video recording, so this is not going to be, the simpler version is not to have your face on the video. Camtasia is something that you can do a full screen recording of. It's a technology that you can use to record it. You have the PowerPoint set up in a slideshow. You press record, and it'll just be your slideshow. And you can walk through it and talk over a slideshow presentation. There will not be you on video. So there are more advanced things that you can use to have you on video, but this is a very simple way to run a PowerPoint presentation. And then video hosting, the very simple one, I'll give you advanced at the end, is use Vimeo to host. Select an option that does not allow them to fast forward through the video. So you don't want them jumping ahead back and forth through the video. You want them to watch from beginning to end because you're giving them information that they need in order to, that's setting them up to be the ideal patient, to be that ideal prospect who schedules that first ROF. So you don't want them to cut any of that stuff out. And the call to action at the end of the video is, and this is without using any technology, to call the office to schedule a first session. Obviously, you can have a appointment scheduler if you use that, but this is the very basic, just call the office. Yes?
Is it better to have your whole self on the video or just your voice speaking for the
It's better if you can do your whole self and also have PowerPoint presentation? Yes. It's simpler to do it this way, which is why in the bare bones campaign, I had this listed. So, but
Tell us what those options are.
we'll walk through it a little bit at the end. So phone call, post-webinar. So now, if they didn't watch or they didn't do this, they didn't book the first session before the scheduled call, you have the scheduled call that's already in the calendar that's backup. You know that there's a 10-minute phone call, you had a hot prospect a week ago, you don't know where they're at now, it doesn't seem like they clicked the links or took any action, and you get to check in with them. So if they schedule the first appointment, if they did it over a phone call, you can cancel that 10-minute appointment. Or if they book it online, you can email them and say, hey, I saw that you booked. I want you to know you don't have to come to this, but I'm still available if you have any questions beyond that. So that 10-minute call can be canceled if they schedule the first appointment. If they don't schedule the first appointment, you're calling them. If they didn't watch the webinar, re-emphasize the importance of watching, re-emphasize the benefits, and then you can get them to rewatch the webinar, or you can send them to the dinner talk. Well, okay, so I get it. It's hard to sit down in front of a computer screen, but we have this event that's coming up. I'm wondering if that's something you'd be interested in attending. What are you doing on Wednesday, the June 28th? So that's something that you can do. If they don't engage with the webinar, you can now position and send to the dinner talk, and you could choose to rebook the call. You'll probably feel it out based on what the person's reasons are, their excuses are, what's the best option there. So if they watched but didn't schedule, there's a reason why they didn't schedule. They have questions, they have objections, they're not sure, they're uncertain. Take this time to answer their questions. Have the person who's on that phone call, that staff member, be able to handle any objections that they have. And the goal is obviously to book that first session. So you have a phone call that they can now book. So we're right here. Did they watch the full webinar? If yes, answer questions, handle objections, book that first section. If no, you have a choice. Do you want to send them back to the webinar to re-engage content that way, or do you want to send them over to the dinner talk? And that choice is really up to you or your staff member based on where you feel and how warm they are, etc. So with this bare bones campaign, you have to prepare 2 scripts. One's a first call script and a follow-up call script that whoever's answering the phones, the staff member, or whoever's scheduling these calls has to, abide by that script. The presentation, you have your script outline, your PowerPoint slide deck, which is you're able to do, if you're already doing dinner talks, you have most of that content prepared. To record the video, you're using Camtasia. To host the video recording, you would do that in Vimeo. And then follow-up emails, you have 5 emails that you're writing, and you're setting that up in your email marketing platform. So I'll let you take a picture of this. I can send out slides, yeah. Yeah, I'll do that after people take their picture. Okay. So yeah, go ahead and take a picture of this one. I forgot to stop.
Hey guys, real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with
Anthony to get all of this put together in a packet along with anything that you might need like Infusionsoft. And so we can do kind of an ABC 1, 2, 3 with it. Would that help? Yeah. Okay, so we'll work on that together to get you a package, right, Anthony?
Yep.
Good, right, okay. So we'll put that together, and then, like I know he mentioned some other companies that you might not be familiar with, so he'll put those in, so you'll have a link so you can see what they'll do. If it's software that's going to help you. So if you take pictures, great, so you can get started, but we'll put that together.
I'll walk through a little more of the software at the end, too, and we can, when we open up to questions, we can go a little bit into the advanced software. Okay, so everyone's got a photo of that. So the reason why I wanted to build this bare bones campaign is because we think just like the monk who joined the monastery and is fresh and excited, we think we need all of these things. We need to have this very complex system. We need to achieve this high level of mastery. When Really, all we need to run this is a video recorder, Camtasia. We need Vimeo. We need an email marketing platform. And we need a telephone. And that's it to run a pretty well optimized funnel, sales funnel for hot leads who are calling your office. That's all that you need. Now, you can get fancy and more advanced. We're going to talk about that. So the simple webinar technology, this is Vimeo. So this is where I recommend hosting your videos if you're doing the simple campaign. This is Camtasia. So this allows you to very simply record videos on your screen. And Camtasia may also have a setting that has your picture in there, so it's recording you as well as the thing. Is that true? Okay, I haven't used that functionality, but okay, so Camtasia, you can use that to have your image as well. I've just never used it in that way. I've only used it for screen recordings. So Webinar 2.0, if you want to be doing more advanced technology, and some of these things aren't that more advanced, but it's just more advanced than the very simple campaign that I showed you. So this is Calendly, which is a preferred appointment scheduling app. So if you want to not have them call the office, a lot of you already have appointment schedulers set up for your office, and there are ones that are specific for doctors' offices. So this is one that I recommend my clients use, but there are ones specific for that. So add an appointment scheduler to this. For video, to track video views and to link to email, there are a couple options. One is Wistia, and Wistia, instead of using Vimeo, you would use Wistia, and Wistia allows you to track the engagement on a video. And you could do everything like they can't fast forward or rewind, they can see how long the video is, or they can not see how long the video is. So I recommend you seeing how long the video is, because you don't want them to be on an hour-long video not knowing when it's going to end. You want to be nicer to them. But this is something that you can use and hook up to your email marketing platform. So if they watch, to the point where they have the call to action and they don't take action, then they get a different set of emails. And that's triggered through the automation in your email marketing platform. So EverWebinar, so if you want a system that's going to do it all in one, EverWebinar does automated webinars. And you can host the video in there, you can host the follow-up emails in there, you can host the lead-up emails in there. If they watch to, you can have the first 5 emails sent out, and if they watch to a certain point in the webinar, they get a different series of emails. If they watch to a certain part of the webinar was the call to action, they start getting the emails to schedule. You can have it linked up to whatever your calendar scheduling thing is. So whenever someone books, they're taken out of the email sequence. So there's a lot more advanced things that you can do with both Wistia or EverWebinar that you have that option available. So this kind of answers the question about doing more advanced email marketing. And Twilio, I would recommend Twilio for bigger campaigns, but this is where you can also add text message marketing into it. So you can, you may need it wouldn't be that expensive. You may need someone who's a coder to help set up and do the custom integrations with whatever email marketing platform you're using. But Twilio can, if you get their phone number as well, which they're calling your office, it's easy for you to get their phone number, their cell phone number, you can follow up with email and text messages, and it can be automated. And you can have them based on, probably better with the more advanced email marketing platforms like Infusionsoft or ActiveCampaign or things like that. But they can get different types of text messages based on what they've done and what they haven't done. So final word on webinars. I'm actually going to give you the final word in case there's any questions, any more advanced things, any things you want to go back and review. I'm open to questions. The webinar that we're designing right now, it used to be an hour and 15 minutes, and now it's down to 40. And ideally, if we can get it down to 35 or 30, that's where we want to go. Sometimes it can be difficult to get everything in and to know how to streamline all of that content. So I said 60 minutes because I know a lot of the dinner talks are scheduled to be that long, or maybe that's, I know that at one point there used to be an hour and a half. So I was just mirroring what the dinner talks were. But if you can streamline the content, the important thing that it's just not just a call to action, that you're delivering value and that they have all of the touch points that they need in order to become an ideal patient. If you can do that in 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, do it. But I'm just saying an hour to not create wrong expectations. Go ahead.
Okay, two questions. In the watch the webinar email nurture campaign, this email anonymous successful case study, can that be a video testimonial?
So go ahead.
Can that be a video testimonial rather than an anonymous case study?
Sure, it can be a video testimonial. I would rather it be a written testimonial so they're not watching a different video other than the webinar. So, but yeah, usually what I do, so case studies are glorified testimonials. Case studies have testimonials built in them, but you're telling more of a story of their journey before and afterwards, where the testimonial is kind of a soundbite that they gave to you. So I include testimonials in case studies. But the case study is the story of their journey. Yeah.
The second part is the Infusionsoft software.
Yep.
How is that? Is that like a Wistia on steroids? Like, is it a bigger one? Like, what's
Infusionsoft? Infusionsoft is an email marketing and CRM platform.
so that's more than what?
Wistia is a video platform. Infusionsoft is like MailChimp on steroids. So, go ahead. Huh? That's fine. You could use Constant Contact. I mean, you could use MailChimp. You know, I don't want anyone to change whatever email marketing thing that you're doing if it's working. All of the email marketing platforms right now have automation built into it. And you can create a form on them. You can enter in their name and email and maybe their phone number, and they'll start getting messages. So whatever email marketing platform you're using, stick with it. It's going to work. If you need to upgrade to something like Infusionsoft or something that has more robust functionality, I'd recommend ActiveCampaign. But if you're already doing something, don't switch to ActiveCampaign. If you're already doing something that works, don't switch, because it's harder to change. Huh? GetResponse. GetResponse is the easiest email marketing platform that you can use. So I usually recommend one of two things. If you want the simplified one, GetResponse. If you want the advanced one, ActiveCampaign. Infusionsoft does have functionality that ActiveCampaign doesn't, but it's like, am I driving a Lamborghini or a Porsche? If you're using a Porsche to just drive around town, like, do you really need the Lamborghini? Like, seriously? So, what other questions do we have? We have one, and we have two. Okay, go ahead.
Just to confirm, we will get a copy of your presentation.
Yes, I'm gonna. So I'm talking with Charles, and everyone's gonna get the PowerPoint. Yeah, and then someone in the back. So there's an advanced tactic that I didn't discuss that we're going to be using with our webinars, where you have a Cliff's Notes of the webinars, which is not exactly a transcription. It's from a transcription, but it's an abbreviated version that you can deliver with the images from the webinar and the abbreviated text that delivers basically the same message. And something that we do with some of the more advanced campaigns is I talked to you about, if you have good conversion rates, between 30 to 40% of people who are cold traffic coming off the internet will actually watch the webinar. So with this campaign, you're going to get higher conversion rate. There's no reason why you shouldn't have 80% of the people watching this webinar, because they already want to schedule a first session, which is why the system works. So the Cliff's Notes are usually come in when they didn't attend the live webinar, they didn't take the replay, and now we send out a Cliff's Notes. So in the email subject line, it says PDF, Cliff's Notes from the webinar. And people are usually like, oh God, thanks so much. I wanted to watch that webinar, but I just don't have enough time. So this I can download, I can just skim through it, and I can get the same things. And at the bottom of each page on the Cliff's Notes, you have the call to action, which is like, hey, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, whatever your call to action is at the bottom of that Cliff's Notes. So that has worked to convert very well, and it particularly works with audiences that don't have a lot of time, like doctors. So with our new webinars, we're going to be having Cliff's Notes at that they'll get in the email series afterwards. Go ahead. Shorter. They're not the full transcript, but they have the images in it. So it's like an infographic. It's like a glorified, somewhere between a Cliff's Notes and an infographic. You want to tell the story. You want to deliver the emotion. So it's not like you're cutting out all the story. You're leaving the story in there, but you're taking out the fluff, and you're bringing it down to the bare essentials of it. So, okay. But again, with this campaign that we're talking about, which is for hot leads, you probably don't need a Cliff's Notes. You're going to be good with the webinar just as it is. And I wouldn't recommend you, unless you have a person who can build it for you and it's super easy, going through that step with this type of webinar campaign. Go ahead.
Did you say we'll get an example of the webinar that some of these people who are having success are doing?
So I can talk with the two people within FPC if they'll give access to it. I know that, I'm sure that wouldn't be a problem. I know Sheila is working with a person who builds webinars, and he's helping her optimize her webinar. So I think that we'll be able to have that as a case study or an example. But it may not be exactly what I showed here. It's what she's doing, so, which is working, so it's a good example. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Emphasize using Vimeo. Why would you want to use that over, say, like a Google Drive link or something?
Sorry, use Vimeo instead of a Google Drive link embedded? Well, Vimeo, it has tracking. So you can track, like, I know if you pass the 20-minute mark, I know if you skip some parts, if I'm allowing you to fast forward and rewind. So Google Drive Vimeo, you can stop them from fast forwarding and rewinding. Google Drive, you cannot do that. So that's a primary reason why I want you to use Vimeo instead of Google Drive, because even though they know they have to, and it's probably good content in the webinar, it's like, oh God, I know at the end of this video they're going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to watch a few minutes, and then okay, I'm just going to skip to the end, and then they didn't go through that experience, that pre-education. So you want to control their experience, because it's going to set them up for the right expectations later. Okay. I think that's about it. Charles?
So here's what we're going to do for you guys. And a really quick question. When they do get to that video, one of the things that I think he made clear here, you may have a webinar that works at 60 minutes, right? But if we can tighten it up, remember when she was talking about holding the bowling balls and having all the, we want to condense it. People's minds, they want it now. I'm one of those guys. Give me the Cliff Notes. That's who I am. If there's a fast forward button on it, I'm using it. If I can speed it up to 1.5 times, and when I listen to my podcast, I listen to them 1.5, right? Because I need to get through the information. So one of the questions I have for you is when they get to that webinar, or whatever we want to call it, right? And we can see, okay, that's 27 minutes. I can put 27 minutes in. Do we want some language on that page that gives some really exciting bullet points that, hey, we're going to talk about this. This is what to expect.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, so this, whatever your bullet points are, it should be, features and benefits. Features is, what is it that you're going to talk about? So I'm going to talk about, give me an example of something that they would talk about in a dinner talk. Go ahead.
Thyroid.
I'm going to talk about thyroid. Thyroid isn't a benefit. Yeah, no, it is a feature. Yeah, so you're talking about thyroid, whatever. And the benefit of understanding how your thyroid works is that you'll be able to X, Y, and Z, have more energy. Understand how to improve thyroid health so you can have as much energy as you need to make it from the time you wake up to the end of the day. So that's a benefit of understanding that feature, which is the thyroid information. So in the first phone call, in the email campaign, On the page, it's just a watch page, so maybe you would put it at the bottom of the on that watch page, but it's going to be in the email campaign for sure, and on the phone call. That's what you want to have. Those are the benefits. What does their life look like after consuming that webinar? Now, you don't want to make huge promises because obviously the bigger the offer, the bigger the promise. So, your promise for watching the webinar is going to be smaller than the ROF, which is going to be smaller than working with you, for 6 months. So you don't want to over promise in what you say the benefits of the webinar is. But yeah, so the person who's on the phone and then in the emails, it should be clear that by the time they get to the end of this webinar, like what is it that they're going to have? How are they going to feel different? Is this going to be able to help them in a typical day? Is their day-to-day life going to improve because they have some knowledge that improves that? And is it going to change their relationship to their family or whatever? So some of the marketing hierarchy of needs is what do they have? What do they feel? What's their typical day like? What's their status? And what's their sense of purpose in life? So whenever I'm writing benefits copy, it's in one of those 5 buckets.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do, guys, because we're running short on time. I'm going to do a couple things. We're going to work together to not only give you these slides, but give you a little bit of instruction there.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
We good with that? Here's what else. Darren, are you back there taking notes for me? Okay, so Darren's taking notes because what I wanted to not forget, right now, we've got this process put together. So I want you to be able to have access so on a whole different, so we're not tracking them, right?
Sure.
So you guys are going to be able to go see our new webinar, and it's built through using our story, through Story Brand. So you're going to see that messaging in there, but you'll see how this is put together, and then you're going to see, we're going to go ahead and include in that so you can see what the emails look like going up to it. So we're both doing the same thing. Your messaging will be a little different, but this way you'll get an idea, oh, I get it. I see what you're sending this first email out, the second email. So I'll put that together
We'll
and
put
give
together
you guys
a special webinar opt-in campaign and know that we're going to be optimizing this even more over the next several months. So if you opt in now, you could re-opt in. We'll send another one out in 3 months after it's fully optimized.
So we'll just let it, we'll do that with it, like have an opt-in campaign, but we'll put a packet together so you'll have access to that stuff. Would that be helpful? And then you can just go through on a separate campaign so you're not getting mixed up in our stats, right? And you can go through it and see how these things happen, what the messaging looks like, and then you can kind of start going off using that as a guide. Sound cool? Okay, thank you, Anthony.
Cool, thank you.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah.